Hi, welcome to Pyrography Made Easy. I'm Brenda. In this tutorial episode, I am going to show you how to create David's winter scene. The artwork is based on a drawing by David Denton. David Denton won my 2019 Win It Draw It contest. Well, let's get burning. The sky. Use a writer pen tip and lightly burn over the trace lines. For the straight lines along the rays of light, I prefer to use a knife tip. This is also referred to as a skew or rounded heel. This type of pen tip is great for burning thin, straight lines. Pulling the pen tip towards yourself helps produce a straighter line, so rotate the board as needed to facilitate this. Once you're done burning in the lines, rub over the area with a pencil eraser to remove any residual graphite. Next, use an embossing tool. It is also known as a ball stylus tool, and press it firmly into the surface of the wood, creating a divot. These tools come in an assortment of sizes, so you can have a variety of divot sizes in your sky. Use the shader of your choice and burn the sky to a dark brown or black color. Rotate the board as needed so your pen tip stays in optimal position when burning along the edges of the light rays. I am using uniform strokes as my main burn method, but I also use some circular motion. Feel free to use whatever burn method that you prefer. The only goal with the sky is to burn it to a fairly uniform dark color. Shallow divots may disappear when burning at a high temperature. A good portion of my divots disappeared. As you finish the sky, I recommend not burning the sky around the Christmas tree until after the tree is burned in. Once the tree is done, then burn carefully around the tree. Make sure to keep the lower edges of the tree jagged, as this creates the impression of individual branches. Next, lightly burn over the light rays. I am using circular motion and some uniform strokes for this. I made the color a little darker as I got closer to the star so that the star would stand out more. The very last thing that I did, which I didn't get recorded, was use a white colored pencil and draw around the edges of the star. The Christmas tree. I used a combination of zigzags and single lines to fill the tree with texture. Initially, the burn is a bit timid and light as I'm figuring out how I want to handle the tree. I seldom plan these things out in advance. As I get further into the tree, my burn strokes do become more confident, and they will be easier to see what I'm doing. The tree in the line drawing is made up of tiers or layers. Each tier gets smaller as you approach the top of the tree. What I did was burn the area just under a tier or layer darker to make the edges of the above tier stand out. Also, I made the lower edges of each tier lighter in color than the top. The exception to this is the top of the tree, which is lighter in color than the rest of the tree. I also made the outer edges along the left and right side of the tree a bit lighter in color than the center. I figured that the edges were receiving more starlight on them. I am using the razor edge of the shader to burn the zigzags and single lines. Some of you have told me that this is difficult to do. An alternative would be using a wire nib tip, similar to the one shown in the lower right corner of the screen. Try it and see if it helps. I will cover the tree trunk after we're done with the tree. The last thing I did with the tree is use a writer pen tip and add a few short, dark lines here and there. I also worked on the outer edges of the tree, making them a bit more jagged. Plus, I darkened up some of the shadowed areas on the tree. Burn darkly along the perimeter of the tree trunk. Then burn some dark lines that have a bit of a curve in them. Don't burn straight lines. Be careful to avoid the rabbit ear. It might be easier to use a writer pen tip for this. Afterwards, burn over the tree trunk so that it is a medium brown color. Lastly, use a writer pen tip and darken up the top of the trunk just under the bottom row of branches. Also, if needed, darken up any of the lines. The twisted trees. We will start with the roots on the right twisted tree. Use a shader to burn in some curling guidelines, then fill the area with uniform and pull-away strokes that follow the direction of the guidelines. It might be easier to rotate the board for this. It was for me. As you fill in the area, add some dark curving lines. Also, the top of the root should be lighter in color than the bottom. The top is the side that is closest to the star. As I said before, start an area by burning dark guidelines on it. These guidelines are what give the area shape. If it is easier, draw the lines in with a pencil first and then burn over those pencil lines. It's really up to you, the shape that you want to give your tree. If you dislike what I did, then by all means use another texture for the bark. When you fill the tree with color, keep in mind that the light is on the left. This means that the right side of the tree should be darker than the left. Also, with any horizontal roots and branches, the bottoms should be darker than the tops. I am using a combination of pull-away and uniform strokes to fill in the tree. As you burn, use a variety of burn stroke colors. Dark burn strokes will appear as shadows or sunken down areas on the tree. Light strokes will appear to be on the surface of the tree. Emphasizing a light burn stroke will provide some additional texture to the tree. For example, a green arrow is pointing to an emphasized light burn stroke. This burn area looks raised up and gives the tree a ropey appearance. That adds to the twisted, gnarly look that I am after for the tree. I tend to use the flat of the shader when adding color to the tree. I use the edges of the shader when burning in the guidelines. There is a considerable amount of reburning involved when creating the trees, at least there is for me. The reburning is done to darken up the overall color and the guidelines. I also use the reburning time to emphasize a few of the paler burn strokes here and there. Another thing I do, or try to do, is to always be mindful of where the light source is. This helps ensure that the shadows are placed correctly. I also try to maintain enough contrast so that the tree branches are distinguishable from the tree trunk. This is especially important where the branches start to emerge from the tree trunk. As I have mentioned in several tutorials, I am showing you how I do pyrography, but I am not saying that my way is the best or only way to do it. I really think that you should compare my techniques with yours and with other artists on YouTube. Then, experiment around and incorporate the techniques that work best for you in your own artwork. There are a growing number of pyrography artists on YouTube, and generally that will mean there will be more people teaching pyrography, and I think that's great. I feel this way because it increases the chances of discovering new or unique burn techniques, or maybe ways of incorporating tools into pyrography that help expand your creativity. With the other tree, I burned pull-away and uniform strokes to fill the tree with color and texture. The strokes were burned in a curving direction to make the tree appear twisted. I actually started with this tree, so I experimented a bit more. I do think that first burning in guidelines makes the process a lot easier. I just didn't figure that out until I was almost done with this tree. I didn't burn this twisted tree very dark at first. This allowed me to make changes to the twist direction if I wanted. While burning lightly allowed me more flexibility to make changes, it also increased the number of times that I had to re-burn the tree to darken it up. As you can see, I did burn in the lantern post. I knew I wanted them to be very dark because they were surrounded by snow. The twisted trees, on the other hand, overlapped onto the sky, so I needed them to be pale enough to stand out. My plan was to burn the twisted trees as dark as I could, but still maintain good contrast with the sky and the lantern posts. At this point, I am adding a number of dark, thin lines on the tree. I have re-burned over the tree several times, but I won't bore you with that video footage. The very last thing I did was darken up any areas as needed and darken up some of the shadows on the tree. The hanging lanterns. If you haven't already done so, burn along the edges of the lantern post. Next, fill the post with texture that is similar to the tree trunk on the Christmas tree. I am using a zigzag burn stroke for this. I chose zigzags because it produces a rough, jagged line that is suitable for tree bark. I use the razor edge of the shader to produce dark, thin lines. I angle the pen tip so that more of the metal is in contact with the wood to produce a thicker line that fills the post with color. The key to effective zigzags is to use a very light hand pressure when burning. Otherwise, the pen tip will sink deep into the wood, making the burn stroke difficult to do. Once the post has color and some texture, then burn some dark, thin, slightly curving lines over it. Continue this process as you work your way down towards the bottom of the post. If needed, rotate the board so your pen tip stays in optimal position when working along the edges of the post. Also, keep in mind where the light is coming from. The star is to the right of the post, and so is the lantern. This means that the left side of the post should be darker than the right. To darken the post, just re-burn over it using the same burn strokes you used to give it color and texture. There is one more thing to consider. The lantern is closer to the post than the star, so the light from the lantern will be brighter. This means that the underside of the limb that is holding the lantern should be lighter in color than the top of the limb. After the post has color and a base layer of texture, burn in the dark, thin, slightly curving lines to represent cracks and small shadows in the bark. Lightly burn over the cut end of the branch. Use a writer pen tip and burn over the trace lines on the lantern. Then, use that same pen tip and fill the lantern with a brown color. I am using circular motion as my burn method because it produces a subtle texture. With the bottom of the lantern, I switched to a larger writer pen tip and filled the area with a uniform dark brown or black color. Then I reburned over the top of the lantern so that it would match. Use a writer pen tip and burn in a small candle with a short, dark wick. As you can see, it has taken me a number of reburnings before I get the candle to the color I want. Afterwards, use a white colored pencil and create a glow around the wick and lantern. I did not use a yellow colored pencil because I didn't want it to be that obvious. I am using an electric eraser equipped with an ink pen eraser to remove some of the color from the ground that is interfering with my candle glow. Once that was gone, then I applied the white colored pencil over the area. The hanging lantern and post on the right side received the same treatment as the left one did. The only real difference between the two posts is that the right side of this post should be darker than the left side of it. So fill the post with the tree bark texture and then burn in the dark metal of the lantern. Again, it is your choice on how dark you want that lantern to be. Afterwards, burn in a small candle and then use a white colored pencil to give a soft glow around the candle and lantern. With the two distant lantern posts, burn them to a medium brown color. Keep the side that is closest to the lantern a shade or two lighter than the opposite side. Burn in the metal portions of the lantern. Don't bother with creating the small candles. The lack of that detail will help create the illusion of depth. Lastly, use a white-colored pencil to add the soft glow on and slightly around the lanterns. The rocky ground. Use a writer pen tip and burn over the ground using circular motion. This means that you will be burning chains of connected circles. The circles are tiny, but the underlying wood can be seen in the center of the circles. At first, I was keeping the burn strokes light in color while I was deciding if I liked the texture. After I decided I did like the texture, I started burning a lot darker to provide contrast with the trees and surrounding snow. To darken up the ground, just reburn over it using the same circular motion burn stroke. It is up to you how dark you want your ground to be. As you work, there are a couple of things to consider. 1. I recommend leaving a small area near the lantern a couple of shades lighter in color. This will help convey the illusion of the lantern's glow. 2. Burn areas in shadows several shades darker. Shadows are found next to the rocks, tree roots, and the bottoms of the rabbits. The last thing that I would recommend is to make the ledge lighter in color than the step down. This will help show that there is an elevation difference. I have a yellow arrow pointing to the spot I am referring to. Fill the semi-large rock with circular motion to give it color and texture. If needed, darken up the shadow on the ground. Lightly burn over the lower edge of the snow. With the large rocks in the front, begin by burning a shadow underneath the snow. Then switch to a shader pen tip and burn over the remainder of the rock. I am using uniform strokes and blotching for this. Blotching is just holding your pen tip in place for a brief moment to create a blotch or a blob of color onto the rock. We will do the same with the next rock. In addition to the uniform strokes and blotching, I also use circular motion on this rock. I let the random nature of the circular motion help give shape to the rock. Rotate the board and burn along the edge where the rock and snow touch. We want a crisp, clean edge right through there. Lastly, burn along the bottom edge of the snow to give it shape. With all of the remaining rocks, we are just going to burn over them using circular motion. This will provide color and a touch of texture. If you reburn along the bottom 1/3 of the rock, that will darken it and turn it into the side of the rock. That will give the rock a 3D appearance. I only did this with the really close rocks. The distant mountains. Use the edge of a shader to burn zigzags and single lines that angle upward from the base towards the peak of the mountain. Leave a small area on the peak unburned to create the impression of snow. I will mention that using a very light hand pressure is the key to burning zigzags when using the edge of a shader. Otherwise, the edge tends to sink down into the wood. Also, keep in mind that a writer pen tip or wire tip might be easier to use than a shader for this. I decided to burn the mountains to a tan color that was lighter in value than the twisted trees. Mountains are usually lighter in color the further away they are. My goal and/or hope was that the pale color would make the mountains seem like they were in the distance. As you work, there are a couple of things that I would recommend doing. First, make the base of the mountains darker than the tops. This will help the mountains stand out from the snowy hills in front of them. Second, for the mountains on the left side of the star, make the left side darker than the right. Basically, we are using the darker color to help the individual mountains stand apart from each other. Lightly burn over the snow using circular motion. I am using the flat of the shader as I do this. The circular motion will provide a touch of color and a very subtle texture. Make sure that the left side of the snow-covered peaks are a bit darker than the right. The last thing to do is use a writer pen tip and burn a dark line under the snow to represent a shadow. Also, burn some thin, jagged lines down the side of the mountain here and there. These lines will give the mountain a little more visual interest and add a touch of contrast. Make sure the lines are burned in the same general direction as the zigzag strokes. We are adding minute cracks and shadows to the mountain, so we want to build upon our existing work. Now we are going to repeat the same process with the mountains to the right of the star. The only difference is that the right side of these mountains will be darker than The only difference is that the right side of these mountains should be darker than the left. Other than that, use the same guidelines and burn strokes as we used on the mountains to the left. A reminder that I am using zigzags and single lines burned so that they angle from the base towards the peak of the mountain. The direction you burn zigzags and single lines can alter the shape of the mountain. Ravines, cliffs, crevasses, etc. are all created by changing the burn direction. An easy way to alter the mountain shape is to draw a line that angles from the base to the peak with a pencil. Then, burn zigzags and single lines on both sides of that line. The zigzags and single lines should angle towards the line. I have 2 tutorial videos that go into greater detail on how to create mountains. The videos are great if you want or need more information than what I have presented in this video. The first one, the mountain lake, is a beginner-friendly video, and it creates a simplistic style mountain, much like this one in the artwork. This was my very first tutorial video I created, and I won't lie, it is hideous for many reasons, but it does have good information in it. The second video, Mount Shuksan, is a more complex and realistic looking mountain. I will put a link to both videos in the description below. The very last thing that I did was add a touch of white colored pencil along the edges of the snow. I only added color to the side that was closest to the star. The snow. I started out with a metal pick and poked small holes or divots into the wood on the distant hills. This idea was terrible, so I don't recommend doing it. I just wanted to explain where the dots came from. Use the flat of a shader and burn over the snow using circular motion. Rotate the board and burn along the bottom edge of the hill to ensure a crisp, clean line. Continue to work on the hills using circular motion to give them color and a bit of texture. I chose circular motion because I wanted some random areas to be slightly darker in color. Circular motion is great for producing randomness. As you work, there are a couple of things to keep in mind. First, the bottom of the hills should be darker than the top. And second, leave a pale area near the lantern to represent the glow of the lantern's light. With the snowbank in the foreground, burn a shadow next to the tree root. Don't burn it too dark as this is snow that we are working on. Then burn over the rest of the snow on the lower snowbank using circular motion and uniform strokes. The color does not need to be uniform. In fact, some variation is good. Make the color of the lower bank darker where it touches the upper bank. A yellow arrow is marking the spot I am referring to. Burn the side of the bank a touch darker than the top. This will give volume or shape to the bank. To put it another way, it will create the illusion that there is a thick blanket of snow on the ground. Add a cast shadow on the snow behind the lantern post. I probably should have angled it towards the left a bit more, since the lantern would be brighter than the starlight is. Afterwards, burn over the snow in a similar fashion that we did the lower snowbank. Use the shader of your choice and burn circular motion and uniform strokes. Darken the right edge to give it depth and vary the color a bit on the snow. One important thing is to keep the front edge, where the upper bank touches the lower bank, very pale in color. The contrast will help create the illusion of a drop in elevation. If needed, darken up the lower snowbank to increase the contrast. Give the right snowbanks the same treatment as the left ones. The shader that I am using is one of my larger shaders. I am using it to get the job done faster and to get some practice time in with this shader. Since the snow does not require precision work, it is a perfect time to get more familiar with this pen tip. The rabbits. Begin by burning in the facial features using a writer pen tip. Burn the underside of the ear to a tan color. Burn a dark line around the eye and burn the iris to a dark brown or black color. Lastly, burn a small, dark dot for the nose. Next, Burn a line along the neck and around the tail on each rabbit. Switch to a shader pen tip and burn along the right side of the far right rabbit. We are basically burning in the shadows. Because of this, I did not burn along the left edge of the rabbit. Burn in the shadows along the center of the middle rabbit. Leave both edges of this rabbit unburned. With the far left rabbit, burn the shadows along the left edge. Leave the right edge unburned. Now I chose to leave my rabbits looking white. You can completely burn over them to make them a tan or brown color, and then reburn to create the shadows. The last thing I did was add a little bit of white colored pencil along a few of the edges to create highlights. Well, I hope you enjoyed the artwork and found the information informative. On my website, Pyrography Made Easy, I have the written version of this artwork along with the free pattern. As I mentioned before, the artwork is based on David Denton's drawing, and I will put a link to his channel in the description below. Well, thank you for watching my video, and I will see you next week.